The picnic was a disaster before I even arrived. Smoldering paper plates, a crushed fruit salad, and a lone sandal stuck in the mud marked the scene. A woman in a blazer was yelling about lawsuits while a guy in khaki shorts clung to a tree branch, trembling. At the center of the chaos, strolling through the haze with the swagger of a bouncer at a bar fight, was a 600-pound grizzly named Daisy. Picture me by the lake, gripping a tranquilizer rifle, still in my bathrobe. You're probably wondering how it came to this. This land wasn't just property, it was a promise. My uncle Henry, a grizzled ecologist with a PhD and a penchant for solitude, left it to me. To most, he was the hermit who'd rather debate a coyote than a neighbor. To me, he was the guy who taught me to track deer at midnight and whisper to bears like they were old friends. When he died, he left no fortune, just a faded envelope with my name, a deed to 78 acres of lakeside wilderness, and a note: keep it wild, keep it fed, keep the crowds out. I honored that. Henry was no dreamer. He was strategic. Long before he passed, he'd worked with the state to zone the land as a conservation habitat. No condos, no vacation homes, no trespassers without permits. Tucked behind a ridge was his masterpiece, a fortified open-air enclosure with steel gates and native brush walls. Inside lived Daisy, a cinnamon-furred grizzly, blind in one eye, rescued from a seedy roadside zoo. She'd been Henry's companion, and now she was mine, legally protected under Federal Wildlife Permit 543A and CWR 3. Daisy wasn't just a pet. She was a responsibility. I maintained her enclosure, her diet, her vet checks, and a stack of paperwork thicker than a phone book. The state inspected quarterly, the feds yearly. I kept everything airtight. You had it with a bear. Life was quiet, raw, perfect, until the HOA showed up. They'd built their cookie-cutter suburb on the lake's far side a few years back, all serene waterfront living and nature trails they didn't own. At first, it was minor. Kids fishing too close, kayakers drifting past my signs. I let it slide as long as they stayed off my land, marked with warnings: private property, wildlife habitat, and Henry's hand-carved masterpiece: danger, live animals. Then came the letters from Susan Harper, HOA president, crisp and typed, each more demanding than the last. The first asked to share my lakefront for their families. I ignored it. The second claimed my exclusive lake use violated public water laws. Pure nonsense, since the lake sat entirely on my land, verified by county maps and Henry's annotated sketches. I sent back a certified letter with zoning docs, easement boundaries, and Daisy's federal permit, plus a post: "This isn't your playground, Susan. Bears live here." That quieted her, but not for long. Soon, I noticed signs of intrusion. A tree felled near my fence, orange trail markers nailed to my pines, a swath of brush cleared where turtles nested. Then, bold as brass, a laminated sign appeared by my dock: "Future HOA trail extension. Enjoy nature responsibly." I ripped it out and stormed their pancake brunch, waving the sign and a boundary map. "Touch my land again," I said, voice carrying over their syrupy chatter, "and Daisy gets her landscaper for lunch." Susan just smiled, smug as ever, and said, "A friend who's a lawyer says you can't own a lake. It's public domain." I leaned in. "Susan, I own the land under it, around it, and every path to it. This is a bear sanctuary, not your beach club." She waved me off. "We'll let the courts decide." It was war. I installed solar-powered cameras, tripled the western fence, added a coded gate, and posted signs every 50 yards with legal citations. I logged every violation, every stake, every flag, into a folder labeled Susan's Folly. I sent copies to the county, the feds, and fed Daisy extra salmon. She liked it smoked. For a while it went quiet, but suburbia has a way of simmering. Sprinklers ran too long, lawns were too neat, and Susan's emails piled up. She was planning something big. I found out from a flyer flapping on a county road pole: spring family picnic. Fun, food, and lakeside bonding at the Natural Meadow Saturday noon. There was only one meadow in this zip code, mine. I drove to the property line and saw it. Pink surveyor stakes jabbed into my soil, twine plotting a grid like they were building a theme park. More stakes dotted the hill near Daisy's enclosure. I snapped photos, called the sheriff, who promised a Monday visit, the zoning office, and the wildlife department. A wildlife officer warned, if that bear gets spooked in a public view, it's a nightmare for whoever's dumb enough to be there. I strung a 10-foot banner across the trail, federally permitted bear habitat. Turn back or lose a limb. Saturday arrived, sunny and oblivious. By 10:30 a.m., I heard leaf blowers. By 11, tent poles clacked, chairs unfolded, and a Bluetooth speaker blared a pop remix. From my porch, coffee in hand, I watched Susan's husband, Greg, sweat through his polo, wrestling a bounce house. Another HOA member, Linda, draped sunflower tablecloths over tables. They'd crossed my fence, set up grills, and pitched a crafts tent 20 feet from Daisy's enclosure, mistaking it for rustic decor. Susan strutted with a clipboard, barking orders like she owned the place. I didn't yell or call the cops. I checked my cameras, loaded the tranquilizer rifle, and fed Daisy early so she'd stay calm. Then I waited. 90 minutes in, their picnic was peak suburbia. Cornhole, rows, screaming kids in the bounce house. Susan stood on a platform, gushing about our untouched lakeside gym. She said nature 12 times, but untouched stung. They trampled wildflowers, crushed turtle nests, and strung fairy lights in century-old oaks. Then it happened. A kid, Tommy, maybe 10, chucked a frisbee too far. It sailed into the woods near Daisy's gate. He chased it, then sprinted back, screaming, "Bear!" Chaos erupted. Chairs toppled, a grill crashed, wine bottles shattered. 3 moms dove behind the bounce house. Susan, undaunted, marched to the gate, waving her clipboard. "Who's responsible for this?" she shrieked, as if I'd snuck a zoo onto her lawn. I stepped from the trees, rifle slung, robe flapping. "You," Susan hissed. "You planted that beast." I ignored her, scanning the crowd. Daisy sniffed the air, calm as ever, full from salmon. "Nobody move," I said. "She's curious, not aggressive. I'll get her back." Susan screamed about liability as someone dialed 911. I radioed the wildlife officer, fired a clean dart into Daisy's flank, and watched her slump peacefully. 10 minutes later, she was asleep. 20 minutes later, the officer arrived, logged the incident, and cleared it. No injuries, no maulings, just a dozen rattled suburbanites, and Susan, mascara streaking, muttering, "You orchestrated this." 3 days later, a manila envelope appeared on my gate, sealed with a tacky HOA crest. Susan had filed a civil nuisance complaint, branding Daisy a predatory threat, and me a menace. It cited blurry photos, Daisy sniffing, me with the rifle, the bounce house deflating, Greg's fault, not mine, and HOA testimonies claiming child endangerment. It was a playbook, scare, distort, litigate. Susan didn't want truth. She wanted control. I countered with a packet to the county, state, and magistrate. Conservation easements, permits, habitat surveys, federal wildlife registration, and letters from biologists and nonprofits praising my work. I included time-stamped footage of the picnic, Susan's crew dragging grills, staking tents, ignoring signs. I could have sued them, but I played defense. Susan, meanwhile, went full propaganda, plastering the neighborhood with flyers. "Bear in your backyard?" They warned of rabies, unregulated predators, and me as a gun-toting recluse. One claimed a dog stopped eating after hearing Daisy snore. Another swore they saw multiple bears. Daisy's one bear, unmistakable. Then Susan crossed a line. A piercing wail woke me, a solar-powered predator deterrent she'd installed along our tree line. It screeched at squirrels, wind, anything scaring deer, foxes, and my herons. Noise complaints piled up, but Susan added reflective tape, calling it a bear barrier from a blog. I'd had enough. I called Dr. Lisa Tran, a state biologist, and Ethan Cole, a journalist with a YouTube channel bigger than Susan's ego. I gave them the tour. Lake, fences, permits, Daisy lounging like a furry diplomat. Ethan's article, "The Bear Next Door," exploded online, picked up by NPR, blogs, even a celebrity vet. Daisy became a conservation icon. Memes, fan art, a viral gif of her rolling in ferns. A GoFundMe raised $12,000 for a wildlife observation deck. The sheriff's clerk asked if Daisy had plushies yet. Susan panicked. Her HOA mutinied, questioning her legal fees. She doubled down, filing an eminent domain petition to seize my land for community safety. It was a fraud, fake signatures, dead residents, duplicates. I handed it to the state attorney and wildlife department. They launched an investigation. Susan's board crumbled. Her VP quit. Her secretary vanished. The conservation board upgraded my land to critical habitat, untouchable forever. I got grants, Daisy got her deck, and Susan got silence. The final showdown was a humid Tuesday at the county courthouse, a moldy brick building reeking of red tape. I arrived early, flannel crisp, armed with a binder and exhibits. Susan, in a blazer and pearls, led her HOA posse like a corporate takeover. Our eyes locked. She smirked. I flipped to my spreadsheet. $18,427 in HOA funds misspent on her picnic. Judge Clara Holt, a no-nonsense woman who'd once fined a guy for overzealous hedge trimming, presided. Susan went first, her leather-bound slides screaming nature's menace. She showed bear attack stock photos, called my permit a loophole, and invented Grizzly pheromone drift. The room winced. I stood calm and played drone footage. Susan's picnic trampling my land, her crew staking protected soil, Greg wrecking a fox den. I presented easements, permits, biologist letters, and the damning spreadsheet. $400 for Daisy makeovers face painting. Susan paled. Judge Holt leaned forward. MS. Harper, did you authorize these funds? Susan stammered, yes. The gavel slammed. Petition denied. The land is protected. The HOA misappropriated funds and trespassed. Reimburse every cent, including the face painting. Susan's board groaned. Outside, Ethan live-streamed. What's next for Daisy? I grinned. A hammock. The HOA imploded. Susan was voted out. Greg quit. Linda fled. The new president, Mark, a wetlands guy, asked me to lead a nature walk for kids. I agreed, but only if they renamed their newsletter The Bare Truth. They did, with Daisy's snoozing photo on the cover. I carved a cedar sign by the dock, home of Daisy, true president. Below, in fine print, she won unanimously. This fight wasn't just about land. It was about justice, boundaries, and standing up when someone tries to bulldoze both. What do you think? Was I too harsh, or was Susan's arrogance the real threat? Share your thoughts below, especially on violence and fairness in everyday battles. Take a stand. Let's hear your voice.